This wasn't just a tax audit, this was a royal detonation dressed up as paperwork. And by the time the sun rose over London, the House of Windsor wasn't whispering anymore. It was swinging. It started quietly, almost deceptively so, with what looked like a routine compliance review. But as confirmed in the unfolding report, what began as a dormant contract dispute exploded into a cross-continental legal storm that threatened to rip open the delicate seam between monarchy, media power, and modern celebrity branding. On February 22, just after 6:01 a.m. London time, synchronized moves from the Crown, regulators, and American authorities sent a message so sharp it echoed across 2 continents. Archewell was officially under investigation, and not symbolically, not politically. Legally. By mid-morning, the Internal Revenue Service had launched a joint compliance review with California's Attorney General, probing alleged tax misclassification and the reported misuse of charitable deductions tied to streaming production costs. The implications were seismic. Content branded as charitable impact media was reportedly also registered as commercial entertainment, double-dipping in narrative and numbers. And suddenly, what once looked like savvy branding began to look like strategic overreach. But the true tremor didn't come from Washington or Sacramento. It came from Sandringham. King Charles III, advised by the Lord Chancellor, authorized an institutional distancing order, the first time in modern history a reigning monarch had formally separated the crown from a family member ahead of court findings. The language wasn't ceremonial, it wasn't polite, it was enforceable. All commercial references to royal styling, heritage, or ceremonial association connected to Archewell were revoked and subject to injunction. The parchment bore the red seal of the Crown Estate. It was cold, it was final, and then came Hollywood's response. At 10:00 a.m. Netflix confirmed it had terminated all remaining partnerships with Archewell and demanded $20 million in reimbursement for unproduced content, reputational damage, and sunk costs. Ted Sarandos wasn't negotiating, he was calculating. Internal legal memos leaked to the Times of London revealed alarm over overlapping charitable and commercial claims. The streaming giant, once the Sussex brand's golden amplifier, was now asking for its money back behind the scenes. Something even more telling surfaced. Archewell had quietly filed a stealth name change and partial dormancy application in California weeks before the audit storm. Risk avoidance? Preemptive restructuring? Smokescreen? Governance analysts were already circling. When you move liabilities into shadows right before regulators arrive, people start asking what you knew. And when you knew it, Meghan's legal team did not sit still. A 12-page rebuttal signed by her U.S. attorney fired back, calling the accusations defamatory and institutionally motivated. The blame was redirected. Netflix for breach, the monarchy for reputational sabotage, the system for punishing a woman who dared to challenge it. The framing was bold, it was confrontational, it was meant to shift the battlefield from finance to identity, but the palace had already fortified its walls. At precisely 12:15 p.m., Prince William issued an emergency directive from Kensington Palace. No royal office, representative, or charitable affiliate was to maintain correspondence or collaboration with organizations trading on expired royal proximity. Translation? The nostalgia pipeline was shut down, and then Princess Anne, the monarchy's steel spine, stepped forward. In a rare live address from Edinburgh, she terminated all cooperation with any entity linked to Archewell. Standards matter, she said. Royal identity is not a license, it is a legacy. The words weren't theatrical, they were surgical. By late afternoon, more revelations surfaced. The UK Charity Commission flagged irregularities in a 2025 youth media initiative in southern Africa. Footage showed children filmed beneath banners bearing Princess Diana's silhouette and the phrase "a mother's crown," reportedly a protected mark under royal heritage licensing. No approval, no consent. And when symbolic capital is leveraged without clearance, the reaction is not subtle. By evening, Buckingham Palace updated its official website. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex profiles were archived under Historical Royal Engagements 2018-2020. Past tense. Archived. Frozen in time. The BBC aired a special edition of Panorama under the headline "The Royal Reset." Analysts called it soft constitutional enforcement. When monarch and heir act in concert, precedent becomes power. But amid the firewalls and injunctions, one silence grew louder than any statement. Prince Harry said nothing. He did not appear in the rebuttal. He did not sign off on the blog post. He was not publicly aligned with the legal counteroffensive. And whispers began. He wasn't briefed. He wasn't consulted. He wasn't in the room. As regulators escalated. Advertising Standards Authority reviews, Ofcom inquiries, compliance investigations. Meghan posted a defiant blog entry titled "More Than a Name," speaking of identity under surveillance and institutions afraid of reinvention. It was poetic. It was pointed. But again, Harry's name was absent. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine delivered 9 devastating words at a charity event. Dignity is protected, not published. And in the contrast between calm restraint and narrative warfare, public opinion shifted. Ipsos polling showed overwhelming UK support for the monarchy's actions. Then came Operation Sovereign Filter, a palace memo outlining digital and legal erasure of any false continuity between Archewell and the crown. SEO metadata adjusted, branding language reclassified. Royal proximity converted into former private individual with past institutional association. The wall was no longer symbolic, it was algorithmic. And still, the Netflix emails kept surfacing. Warnings about royal imagery licensing, concerns about exposure, requests to scale back crown visuals, yet episodes reportedly open with walkabouts, Diana funeral crowds, heritage framing devices. Not branding, producers argued. Resonance about resonance without license can look like trespass. By February 24, Commonwealth governments were reviewing Sussex title usage in official communications. The Governor-General of Canada convened assessment. Australia and New Zealand followed. The crisis had metastasized beyond tabloid fodder into diplomatic recalibration. And then, in a move no one predicted, Harry privately contacted the King's chief legal counsel, not for reconciliation, but clarification regarding his children's legacy independent of Archewell. That detail cracked the fade. Was he preparing for separation? Strategically? Emotionally? By February 26, King Charles addressed the nation from Sandringham. Titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex were suspended indefinitely from formal public and diplomatic usage. Not revoked, frozen. The door not slammed, but locked. And finally, Harry spoke in a surprise CNN interview, admitting he never wanted this war and announcing a full step back from Archewell. Meghan did not respond publicly. Her website went into maintenance mode. Posts disappeared. Regulators advanced. The ears deepened its audit timeline. What began as a compliance review had become a systemic reset. This wasn't just about tax classifications or a $20 million reimbursement demand. It was about who controls legacy in the age of streaming. It was about whether royal symbolism can be monetized without consequence. It was about the fragile line between personal brand and public institution. And at the center of it all stood 3 names: King Charles, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, suspended between bloodline and branding. Between duty and defiance stood the slow, calculated tightening of every legal screw, every diplomatic bolt, every symbolic hinge holding the monarchy together while Archewell's empire trembled under fluorescent audit lights. Because once the titles were frozen and the $20 million Netflix reimbursement demand was made public, this stopped being about one contract. This became about jurisdiction, about precedent, about whether a modern monarchy could be commercially shadowed without consequence. Behind palace walls, what insiders called Operation Final Distance moved from draft to enforcement. It wasn't a press strategy, it was architecture. A coordinated effort across 14 Commonwealth realms to suspend diplomatic references to the Sussex titles, eliminate any sovereign confusion, and prevent reputational co-mingling between state-backed symbolism and private enterprise. Canada received the memo. Australia followed. New Zealand initiated review. The message was unmistakable. The crown was drawing a border, and it was no longer porous. Meanwhile, in California, Archewell's legal defense hardened. Meghan's attorney reiterated that no monarch could erase a legal title with paperwork and framed the investigation as institutional retaliation. But regulators weren't debating narrative. They were examining numbers. California's Registry of Charitable Trusts flagged production accounts tied to media grants. The EARS audit timeline reportedly expanded to include allocations between 2022 and 2024. One particularly scrutinized figure, $2.1 million categorized simultaneously as charitable education and entertainment development, became the focal point of financial analyst speculation. And then came the footage. BBC investigators aired segments showing children in southern Africa standing beneath banners emblazoned with Princess Diana's silhouette and the phrase "a mother's crown." Protected symbolic registry, no licensing, no authorization. And when those images were linked to monetized streaming projects, palace advisors didn't call it branding, they called it misappropriation of moral capital. Prince William convened emergency sessions with charity fraud officials and external counsel. Princess Anne issued written disassociation. Sir Jonathan Hepworth delivered a 4-point legal directive demanding immediate cessation of royal terminology, removal of unlicensed imagery, termination of implied endorsements, and a 14-day compliance deadline. Asset freeze petitions were mentioned. Civil injunctions were prepared. The Crown wasn't posturing, it was preparing litigation pathways. Public opinion tilted sharply. Ipsos polling showed 73% UK support for the monarchy's response. In Britain, this wasn't perceived as cruelty, it was containment. But the emotional center of the storm remained Prince Harry. Sources confirmed he had not approved the tone of Meghan's legal rebuttal, nor the defiant Archewell blog messaging. He relocated to a private residence in Santa Barbara. He declined participation in at least one scheduled legal strategy call. Insiders described him as in retreat emotionally and strategically. And when reports surfaced that he had contacted the king's chief legal counsel to clarify protections for his children's legacy independent of Archewell, the narrative shifted from united front to internal fracture. This wasn't just institutional distancing anymore. It was marital and strategic divergence playing out in whispers. Then King Charles addressed the nation. Seated at Sandringham, before a fireplace once used by Queen Elizabeth II, he announced the indefinite suspension of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles from formal, public, and diplomatic usage. Not revoked, suspended, a constitutional freeze. The door, he said, was not closed, but it would not swing freely. The symbolism was devastating. Commonwealth databases were updated. Government communications quietly removed title references. Parliament passed a bipartisan motion commending the king's constitutional clarity. Regulators escalated. Ofcom launched inquiries into content misrepresentation. The UK Charity Commission widened its foreign donation review. The Royal Trademarks Office filed emergency injunction applications blocking commercial usage of phrases like Duchess of Sussex, Windsor Legacy, and Crown Voices. And then, finally, Harry spoke. In a surprise CNN interview, he admitted he never wanted the war, but acknowledged he had helped create it. He stopped short of condemning Meghan, but distanced himself from recent legal messaging. He announced a full step back from Archewell, entering what he called a period of reflection and rehabilitation. No timeline, no media circuit, just retreat. It was the first time the world saw him not as defiant prince or brand partner, but as a man caught between bloodline and narrative machine. Meghan did not issue a televised response. A brief press note cited focus on personal wellness and motherhood. Archewell's website went into maintenance mode. Several posts featuring imagery of Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana quietly disappeared. Silence replaced defiance, but silence does not halt audits. Because by now, this was bigger than public sympathy. This was about whether a modern philanthropic media hybrid could leverage proximity to a constitutional monarchy without formal alignment. It was about the monetization of inherited symbolism. It was about regulatory frameworks colliding with celebrity activism. Inside royal corridors, advisors described February 26 as a quiet revolution in institutional enforcement. Not loud, not theatrical, systematic. Harry stood suspended, not stripped, not reconciled, in limbo. Meghan faced not just a reputational challenge, but a structural one. Audits, reimbursement demands, compliance deadlines, potential injunctions. Netflix recalculated exposure. Commonwealth governments recalibrated protocol. The Crown reinforced boundaries. And in the end, the phrase that lingered, repeated by analysts, echoed by Palisades, was simple: titles fade. Duty endures. This was never just about $20 million. It was about control, of narrative, of legacy, of law. And in that battle, no one walked away unchanged.